Super. So hopefully we'll have no internet issues today, but if we do, we're just going to work around it. So welcome to everybody to Conversations of Impact. My name is Michaela Donegan, and I'm the Social Innovation and Impact Manager here at Social Impact Ireland. Thank you so much for joining us here today at lunchtime. This is our first lunchtime event, I suppose, this year. Sorry, just a second here now. This is our first lunchtime event of this year, and it's part one in a series of 6. So we're just going to run from now until June with these series of 6. So it is a lunchtime, so do feel free to eat away and make yourself a nice cup of tea or coffee. I'm going to be here drooling in the background. So do enjoy your lunchtime as we have conversations of business legal structures, the positives, the hurdles, and some of the nervousness that can be attached to this type of language. And feel free to contact us across our social media platforms, which are being covered by my colleagues. So you can reach out to us on the Social Impact Ireland Twitter account on the hashtag Conversations of Impact, or please feel free to contact us on our Zoom chat also. So the format for today is short, as this is a lunchtime event and we endeavour to finish by 2 o'clock. So in a few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to our amazing panellists for today. So we've Claire Downey from the Rediscovery Centre in Dublin, we've Anne Marr from the Urban Co-op in Limerick, Miriam Spallin from the Art Centre in Dublin, Liam Fleming from Siúl Ella in Tipperary, and Nicole Ryan from Alex's Adventure in Cork. So we have a nice spread throughout the country. So after our conversations, we're going to have about a 10-minute of question and answer sessions. So do please feel free to pop in any questions that you have into the Zoom, and we'll get to them later on. So here at Social Impact Ireland, we feel strongly that all legal structures belong in the social enterprise space, and that it's not the legal structure that matters, but the impact that you're going to have. So you can have a purely for-profit organisation where the business models are completely geared to make profits, and that can have a bigger impact than one organisation that calls itself a social enterprise. So without further ado, I'm actually going to introduce you there to our 5 panellists. So welcome to Claire Downey, the Director of Research and Policy from the Rediscovery Centre, Anne Marr, the Managing Director of the Urban Co-op, Miriam Spallin, the founder of Connection Art Centre, Liam Fleming, the founder of Siúl Ella, and Nicole Ryan, the founder of Alex's Adventure. And Nicole is also a colleague of ours here at Social Impact Ireland. So we're delighted that you could join us here today, and thank you so much. We do appreciate your time and getting involved in these important conversations. So first of all, I might just ask the panelists just to introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about the business that you're involved in. And after that, then we'll delve into a little bit more of the juicier parts. So Claire, maybe you might like to go first. That'd be brilliant.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, and thanks so much for having me on. And it's nice to see well, so many people on the call today. So as Michaela said, I work at the Rediscovery Centre. It's the National Centre for a Circular Economy here in Ireland. And the centre works across a whole range of areas. We have a comprehensive education programme at primary, secondary, tertiary level and adult education. There's demonstration through our repair and upcycling of fashion, bikes, paint and furniture. And we also do advocacy and collaboration. And we currently have 40 employees and trainees, so decent work and training opportunities for those people. And I suppose just a little mention of the roots of the centre. It grew from its origins as part of the redevelopment of Ballymun, a disadvantaged area in North Dublin. So very much originated in the community, but now works at a national level.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. Miriam, would you like to follow on?
Hi, so my name is Miriam Spallin and I'm the founder of Connections Art Centre. So at Connections, we provide accessible arts, lifestyle and training programs for the wider disability community. So it's a safe, inclusive space where the members of this disability community can learn, grow and connect through the arts. Part of what we do is also to support and empower members of the disability community to develop their creative skills and take the next steps towards meaningful employment. We're a relatively new organisation. We're not even a year old yet, so we're at the early stages.
Brilliant. It's fantastic. Anne from the Urban Co-op.
Good morning, good afternoon, I should say. Yes, I'm in the Urban Co-op. It was set up about 8 years ago as Limerick Community Grocery, kind of in response to Dell leaving Limerick. So the idea really was to create an economic model where people would be able to be empowered to create their own wealth. So it acts as a grocery. So we operate by selling local and organic food. It's underpinned by wellness and nourishment, but we also have expanded over the last few years to have other elements of wellness. So we rent out rooms to therapists. So there's a big plethora of activities going from Pilates, yoga, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, even learning how to play the ukulele. But it's basically, the underpinning is that it's wellness. So it's grown substantially over the last few years. And I suppose the pandemic has really been very important for us because a lot of people come here. It's a very much a sociable place and people connect with each other. So the strength and the depth of the relationships is really, really important. But it also has become a great platform for inspiring ideas, for developing new businesses. And but we're very much being underpinned as well by trying to improve the circular economy and showing that this is possible, that you can do it yourself. So in the meantime, the coffee is very good. It's organic with raw milk.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anne. I might just take a chance there. If we can just ask everybody to put themselves on mute, that would be excellent. Thank you so much. Liam, can we come to you next? Just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, kind of course. Yeah. So I suppose my name is Liam from Tipperary, and I suppose Shula is the walking movement that I founded in Claheen in County Tipperary in 2016. And I suppose it's really just about getting the benefits of walking. You know, where I'm from in Claheen and County Tipperary, we have mountain trails and forest trails all around us. And at the outset, I'd be out walking, and there'd be very few local people out walking, and wondering why is this like? And basically, a lot of them just weren't familiar with the trails. You know, especially I suppose when you go off road and into the forest and into the mountains. So we started developing walking programs and getting aimed at communities, you know, people living in the communities themselves to highlight what was on their doorstep. And, you know, I suppose the big thing that from that was that they found all these walking trails in our maze was on their doorstep. The other side of it was the social connection that they got from it. And that's really what drives Shula. They come for the health benefits, I suppose, of walking, but it's the social side of it that brings them back. So since we've done that, we've facilitated over 50,000 walks throughout Tipperary, and we're now looking at going outside Tipperary. But what we do basically is go into communities, see what's there, build a walking program around what's in their actual community, and you know, each community is different. So we have a huge variety of different walking programs, whether it's couch to mountaintop, or walk in the park, or riverside walks, graveyard walks. We've nighttime walks. There's an endless list of them. Basically, like once you go into any individual community, you know, you just get innovative, I suppose, with what's there, and create walking programs out of it. And you know, I suppose they're designed for communities to live quality lives, socialize together, and to combat isolation. And it's that like I said, that social side of it is really important, and the safety and just the fact that these walks are organized. People can just turn up whenever they feel like it and go, and you know that they're going to be safe, organized, and they enjoy themselves. And that's basically what we do.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Liam. As Ken said at the beginning there, we do need to take a trip out and join you someday. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Nicole, you might like to go next.
Perfect. Hi guys, my name is Nicole Ryan. I'm founder of Alex's Adventure, which is a drug education company that teaches young people about substance misuse and different types of aspects of that. I started Alex's Adventure 6 years ago after losing my brother Alex to a substance overdose. He was 18 at the time. He died. He went into hospital. He died 4 days after. So after that, I kind of thought about how we teach drugs to young people, and how we talk about substances wasn't up to date. And I remember sitting and waiting for somebody else to take over, and I realized that if I wasn't going to do it myself, nobody else is going to do it. So that's when I started my journey. So 6 years on, I work with all sorts of secondary schools across Ireland. I work with Youth Reach, I work with primary schools, secondary, college, you name it, parents, the lot. And we'll be soon bringing out an e-learning program as well. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, that's a little bit about Alex Adventure.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, absolutely amazing social enterprise. So what we're going to do now is actually delve into the really juicy parts and the questions that everybody will be interested in hearing on the call today. So I might just go back around again. Maybe Claire, you might start again, just to tell us what the legal structure of the Rediscovery is, the Rediscovery Centre is, and why it was set up in that way.
Yeah, the centre is one of the more, I suppose, common forms that you identify in the report, the Social Impact Ireland report about legal forms. So we're a CLG charity. And as I mentioned, we were set up 17 years ago. And at that time, the legal advice was a CLG charity was the best structure for a social enterprise doing what we do. Of course, there are quite a few challenges with it, and it's not really ideal in the grand scheme of things, but it was the most fit for purpose at the time.
Okay, does that allow for funding and tax reasons when you're set up in that particular way?
Yeah, indeed. Sorry, yes. So the primarily for I suppose working on training programs, work integration programs. So quite a lot of the people working here at the centre are on various labour activation schemes, from CE to TUS to community services programme. So it's important for that, and from a more general funding perspective in terms of working with grant schemes and partnership programs and so on. Through various departments.
Yeah, I suppose for us here at Social Impact Ireland, we believe that everybody belongs in the social enterprise space, and that includes not-for-profits and charities. So I suppose, would the Rediscovery Centre identify as a social enterprise?
100%, yeah, absolutely. And very much our vision and what we stand for is really rooted in social and environmental impact, and we do communicate that in all of our work. Our vision is a society fair, inclusive, that thrives in natural resource limits. So we definitely identify as that. We're currently involved in the Social Impact Ireland pilot with Pauline and Eamon to become an accredited to the social enterprise mark. So we definitely see ourselves in that space. All going well, we hope to be one of the first social enterprises in Ireland to be accredited this year.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I guess just the other thing, I think that we, in the space that we're working in specifically in circular economy, it's becoming more and more apparent that the value and role of social enterprise in the circular economy. And the OECD just published a really interesting report on this. The role of social economy in the circular economy, highlighting how social enterprises are pioneering. They bring value in terms of job creation, so a just circular transition, awareness raising, the role of social enterprises in that. Focus on local economy, which absolutely ties in with this idea of local repair, local recirculation of products. So that connection is really important as well. And we're trying to do some work to raise awareness about that. We've got a project at the moment through Department of Rural Community Development. One of the Arise programs we'll be running is really to show that role of social enterprise and circular economy, and how it's also pioneering and really exciting space to be in.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Claire. That's excellent. And I might just move on to you next, if that is okay. Just to inform the audience of the current legal structure of the Urban Co-op, because I think this is very interesting and it'll be interesting for people to know. And has that held you back in any way?
Yes, I suppose it's a topic that we're very much currently looking at again now, but contrary to popular belief, we're actually not a cooperative legally. We actually are a CLG as well. And because the organization is 8 years old now, I wasn't one of the founder members, but speaking to the founder members as to why it was set up as a CLG, the thinking at the time was, the vision at the time was to set up a cooperative, but for anyone who knows what is involved in setting up a cooperative, it obviously involves getting a lot of collaboration from a lot of people, and it's quite time consuming. So in order to accelerate the momentum at the beginning and not let it fall apart at that precious, passionate stage, the decision was made, look, we'll just put it into a CLG. It was a basic form that would legally kick it off the ground, really. And with the view to later on coming back to transferring over into being a cooperative structure. So it was done in that capacity, but it was also done in the capacity of, look, we would operate under the cooperative principles. So in a way, a best of both worlds. Now, to be fair, the CLG has been, I hazard a guess that if it had started off as a cooperative, it might not be here today. And I think the CLG structure actually did benefit the organization for these years, because still really at that startup phase where you're trying to develop your structures and develop your routines, etc., and face all the obstacles along the way. So I would say that in many ways the CLG has definitely benefited us, but as it happens now that the pandemic is over, and well, I'm hoping it's over. We're all hoping it's over. That and we're getting time to think again, because it has been incredibly busy over the last 2 years, as you can imagine. But we're actually starting to discuss the idea: is this possibly a good time to consider changing? Now, one of the things that we have, it's a question mark we have, or it's we're using the phrase, it's that itch that needs to be scratched, where there's an impression that we are the co-op, and then you have to go and explain all that I'm explaining to you right now. So what we would find, I'm just tentatively at this moment, even just chatting to members who are coming in the door, we will be sending out a survey to the members, and our membership at the moment is over 2,500 people. And I'm conscious as well, with the board, we're all conscious as well, because the board has shrunk due to the impact of COVID. The idea of member engagement is something that we really must work on in order to ensure the continuity and sustainability of the co-op. There are a lot of people who really genuinely have got what we do, and they will very quickly verbalize that I don't know what I would do without you. I need you to be here in my life. This is so important to us. But we're seriously looking at this now, and obviously getting that information out to the members, and based on what they say, like if they say yes, they'd be interested in us pursuing this, no, they wouldn't, or maybe some of them will come back with, I really don't know what you're talking about. So but the real reason we would like to do it, I guess, is one of the main obstacles is this accessing share capital. And at this stage, there's a lot of people, in a way, we feel like we've been this eternal pilot, and the fact that you don't actually have to explain a vision anymore. It's actually here, you can see it in action. So that's where we're at. But at the same time, we do feel this is quite an interesting time, and it's an interesting project, or potentially, and there's a lot of learning that can be got from it. So we would be very, very interested in utilizing this as a pilot for other organizations to say, well, look, can this be done? And can other organizations who are struggling with this, can they learn from our journey on it? But our mission as well is often to be a pilot cooperative. So maybe, or you know, so from that point of view, maybe this could be the ideal project at the ideal time. But as I say, we will be sending it out to the members in the next newsletter and surveys, and it will be led by their decision.
Brilliant. And thanks so much for being so transparent there. A lot of information to go through. So that's really brilliant. Can I just ask again for anybody on the call just to mute themselves? That'd be brilliant. Just to make sure everybody's on mute.
I'm sorry, Michaela, I'm very conscious as well that there's noise in the background here because the shop is just behind me. So that noise could be me. It could be from our side.
That's no problem. That's no problem.
I'm texting down to them. I said, turn down the music, please. Turn down the music. I'm just glad it's not Metallica.
Yeah, we're the only ones that can play Denise Child at the beginning. We were very loud then. So that's brilliant, Anne. I might just remind everybody that you can put any questions that you have for Claire, our previous speaker, or for Anne now, just pop them in the Zoom chat or onto Twitter using the hashtag Conversations of Impact. So please do keep asking questions as we go along, and we'll come back to them at the end. So Miriam, could you just tell us a little bit about the legal structure of Connections Arts Centre? And would you have had a nervousness about setting up in that manner?
So Connections is a CLG trading as a not-for-profit. And I'm going to be brutally honest, it's a very new business. And when I set it up, it was in the middle of a pandemic. And I went onto CRO and I looked at the breakdown of all the different companies and what would be most suitable for me. One of the biggest things for me was I was looking for something that would minimize my own personal liability and that also would be very easy to set up. So things like the single document constitution, things like that were very simple and accessible for me to set up on my own. And there was no share capital involved. So they were the things that I was looking at. I had it in my head that I didn't want to be a charity. So we are trading as a not-for-profit, and that comes with its problems as well. It cuts us out of a lot of funding, but it makes us available for other funding. So it's very hard to know. It really is, especially when you're starting out and you're looking at the different formats and you're kind of going, where do I fit? And it was a really take a chance on this, go with this and see what happens. And it has worked out well for us, but it definitely, there are things that walls that I've hit around, like even there's a recent funding that came out and it's for mental health and you have to be a registered charity. And so not-for-profits and social enterprises are just completely blanked out of that. And that's very frustrating because I know this is what we're doing. We're business for good and we should be able to access that funding as well. And the other thing about it was 2 directors and 1 member. So again, it was just me starting off this company. There was nobody else. So it was all about making it really simple and what was accessible to us.
Yeah. So do you feel at the moment that the legal structure that you currently have will be a barrier for growth?
No, I mean, really, we are hoping to run as a social enterprise and have traded income and that we will stand on our own 2 feet. But starting out, it would be good to be able to access more supports. We are lucky, we're working with Rethink Ireland at the moment, so as part of their start of social enterprises, and that's great. But I suppose, I think it's still very confusing for a lot of people and where you fit and trying to, you have to go into the fine print on every application to see if you actually can apply for funding on this or that. And it's just, it would be nice if it was, that social enterprise was more, there was more clarity around it. But not at the moment, I don't think so. For where we are, it suits us fine.
Yeah, thanks so much for being so honest. It is great, and I suppose that's what our conversations here are all about. It's just that everybody's learning and growing. So
yeah, and we're at such a small organization at the early stages, so we're completely different to everybody else. It's starting.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good for everybody on the call here to hear all those stories. That's brilliant, Miriam. So if anybody has any questions for Miriam, just place them in the chat now. That'd be excellent. Thank you. So Liam, your Shulella is set up as a designated activity company. Is that right?
Sorry, no, just continue. Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. I suppose to explain how we came to that. I would have been on the BNest incubator program, the precursor, I suppose, to Social Impact Ireland, back in 2016. So that was my first introduction to social enterprise, and that was it was trying to think, it was 2 blocks of 8 weeks programs, and I remember like kind of Eamon and Pauline, and were given the course, and you know, it was saying for most of us in the room that time that this was a lot of our first introduction to social enterprises, and basically to sit back and listen for the first few weeks of it, you know, and kind of decide after that as to what you feel is the best route to go down. And like you're saying, you know, the social enterprise, it's a full range, you know, from charities and to not-for-profits and for-profit business. Everybody can come in under the umbrella like of it. But for us, after that kind of the initial block of the incubator program, we actually set up as a sole trader initially, just to get off the ground. And then after that, we set up then as a DAC. And again, the DAC, I suppose, kind of similar to Miriam there, it was the most convenient way for us, I suppose, to get up off the ground, to kind of like, you know, to get in under the social enterprise umbrella. And I suppose for us, I was wary kind of setting up as a CLG, you know, that option was there, but again, it seemed a bit too much for us. And I suppose one of the things I was wary about is I suppose you're handing over control to a board, and for us at those initial stages, we still were finding our own feet, and we weren't sure exactly what direction you're going in, kind of like, and you know, without I know if I had set up as a CLG at that time, that people would have been on the board that may not have had the same agenda as ourselves, and could have possibly shifted Shulella in a direction that we wouldn't have been comfortable with, like, you know. And even from that initial incubator program, you know, they would have had guest speakers in, and situations like that would have happened to people before, like setting up social enterprises that, you know, they maybe have followed a grant or whatever, like, and there were certain conditions with it, but for that then it meant maybe moving away from their own mission as such, like. And so for that reason we went to the DAC, and you know, it was relatively straightforward. You know, our accountant was able to set it up, and you know, it was, again, we just needed 2 board members, and you know, we were away, like, you know. So so it was that initial stage of being able to kind of still steer the ship, kind of like, was very important. As things evolve now where we are now, you know, we're kind of standing on our own 2 feet, and it's, you know, we'll be confident enough now to widen the board out, I suppose, kind of like, you know. So but just in those initial stages, definitely setting up as a DAC was the right way for us to go. And but I suppose then the cons of it are, again, kind of like Miriam said, you know, the whole sphere is still very kind of confusing. You don't I still don't times feel like you're 100% in the social enterprise sphere, just because most people kind of don't seem to fully understand the legal structure. Sometimes you qualify for funds, and more times you don't. And again, like we're on the Rethink startup fund there as well, and that's great, because I think, as far as I know, we're the first DAC in the country that has received funding from the government, you know, to support us in that, like. So that's for me, that's a great step forward for future social entrepreneurs that want to get in the door, like, you know. So that's, I suppose, yeah, that's our story.
Yeah, like it's great now to hear that you've moved from one structure to another. So it's really good to kind of follow the pathway that you've taken. So like the legal structure that you're on at the moment, do you think that will hold you back in any way for scaling?
Possibly. Well, again, but it won't from us, I suppose. From what we want to do, it's fine. I suppose maybe just, and I don't know the answer to this myself, but from a funding point of view, from access and grants and stuff, will be the only thing that would hold us back. But the actual, again, we hope to stand on our own 2 feet, kind of, as much as possible, and not rely on funds. But you know, as regards standing on our own 2 feet, it won't hold us back, like.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thanks, Liam. Again, if anybody has any questions for Liam that we're going to take at the end, do pop them in the Zoom chat now. So Nicole, we're going to come back to you from Alex's Adventure. It was set up as a limited liability company. And just, I suppose, if you had your time over again, would you choose the same structure?
Yeah, 100%. I choose private limited by shares, the commercial model. For me, I think like a lot of everybody who's here in social enterprise, I started in 2016, but I didn't actually incorporate until 2019. Now, in the first couple of years, what I was doing was I was piloting, I was testing the market to see like, was this viable? Do I have something? Is it worth it? So when I did a program, a social program, and I came out of that with a head full of dreams, really is what I came out with. And at the time, everyone was doing CLG. So I came in and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to do CLG. This is brilliant. But then I joined the commercial program in UCC Ignite, which is, I was their first social enterprise, and I was surrounded by people who are like, you know, in the tech field, they're in the medical field, all these kinds of things. So I was kind of really out of my depth. And I remember then in that year, before I incorporated in 2018, I spent ages, I mean, ages weighing up the decisions of CLG, non-for-profit, and I had so many people in my ear telling me what I should do and how easy it would be to access grants. If you just do CLG, you know, you'll get all the grants in the world. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of great. But then I remember discussing it with Eamon, and he said, why do you see yourself as a CLG? What's wrong with making profit? And to me, like, that was the question that I was like, actually, what is wrong with making profit? Like, profit isn't a bad word. I have to live. I have to be sustainable for me to continue the impact. And I remember when I came down to it, I was literally, I met with somebody in Rethink Ireland, and they were like, oh, like, we really love your idea. It's fantastic, and we'd be able to help you, but you need to be non-for-profit. And I like, remember standing in my kitchen and I was like, okay, it's going to be easy. I'm going to do CLG, but my gut was like screaming, and it was like, don't do it. Go limited. Trust yourself. And I totally pivoted and I said, no, I'm doing it limited. And I faced like a lot of backlash from that, because it was like, you're limited, but you're doing something impactful. Like, you can't be making money off that. And so I was in this kind of middle ground whereby I saw myself as a social entrepreneur, but nobody else saw me as a social entrepreneur. So if I met people who were in commercial business, they were like, oh, you're a charity, that's grand. But when I met social entrepreneurs, they were like, but you're a business, like, you're not really a social entrepreneur. So I was kind of fighting my way through. But the one thing that I held on to the whole time was, I knew if I could become sustainable on my own, I could create more impact. I could, you know, make bigger impact, and I wouldn't have to worry about what we all worry about every day, which is finance. Like, if I could just do this, and it came with its challenges, because all of a sudden I'm a limited company, so therefore I can't access grants. I'm not eligible for any of that stuff. Anything that comes from the government, good luck, see you later. Nicole can't have any of that. But what I could have was impact investors and private investment. I could sell my shares, and like, I could actually, CSR was a big thing for me. So teaming with companies, corporates. And even though like that's a model that usually charities go for, you know, and they have that, limited companies can actually access it. If there's a will, there's a way. And I've found many ways to do this with Alex's Adventure being a limited company. So if I could go back, I would definitely do it all over again the exact same way.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for telling us your journey. As mentioned before, it's just so great for everybody on the call here to hear these stories, because everyone's in different positions and thinking about what their next step is, or, you know, they might be at an idea stage, they might be trying to scale. So it's great that we have people from all the different sections and areas within social enterprise. That's brilliant. I just spot here, Patricia, I think you have your hand up, Patricia. Did you want to ask a question, was it?
Yes.
Oh,
hold on. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
So
you're fine, no problem.
So I have a minor disability. So if people can just, instead of writing saying DAC or whatever, just say what the acronym is, as opposed to, because I literally go, DAC, is that a bus? Is that a Dublin bus there? Like,
That's fair enough. Yeah.
So it just, I would really appreciate that. I mean, we're talking about inclusion here, so, you know, that is something, I just think that's something that people need to, I know it's not intentional, but, you know, I have an acquired brain injury, and if you could be talking, like, it's like talking to a lawyer, and it just sounds like, and I'm not trying to be rude, but just gobbledygook. So if you can just say, you know, I applied, I got DAC, this is what DAC means, or DAC is this, you know, or say what it is and then say the shortened thing, and then there's like a connection. So sorry, I just.
No problem. No, Patricia, we totally appreciate that comment, because I think when people are so familiar with their own area, they do start to make the shortened versions, and we're all in a space, like if we're not in that area, we don't understand the acronym. So absolutely, totally take that on board. And it's what we're all about. We're all about inclusion. So take that on board. Thanks a million. So as I mentioned earlier, we are hopefully all enjoying our lunches there in the background. And that nothing has made you too startled so far that there's any spillages on the desks or anything like that. And I hope you're enjoying our hour here of lunchtime. So what I'm going to do now is actually bring the panelists together, and just to ask you, you can just pop on as you wish to answer the question. So it's like, if you had your time over again, would you choose the same structure?
Will I jump in if if no one else is? Yeah. Yeah, I guess from a rediscovery center perspective, I think it probably doesn't directly answer the question, but we would prefer if there was a different framework or a different legal structure. And I know that was addressed in the report on legal structures. For example, a community interest company. Having charitable status doesn't always work for social enterprises, as I'm sure many of you are aware, particularly the type of organization we are. We don't actually fundraise or take cash donations or anything like that. Most of the work is partly funded by earned income and partly through partnerships and grant schemes and so on. So the model that's there and available that we've selected, CLG with the charity status, isn't a great fit, but we haven't identified an alternative that would fit better, I suppose. So yeah, we'll also identify with lots of other barriers that have been highlighted in that report. Lack of awareness of social enterprise for sure is always a challenge, and trying to explain that you're a business as well as having a social mission. And obviously there's a lot of work going on in that space with the department as well. The perception of charities, it's not a real business, and so on. So I think we're probably in a reasonably good place now in this area of circular economy, because there's growing level of support and investment. So we're not kind of at that early stage or looking for early investment capital. So we're kind of in a maybe more fortunate place, so we don't see it as critical, the legal structure, to be able to access some of these other types of funds, but it's still would prefer to see other options available.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Is there any, because I know a lot of you might have already spoken about this already, but is there anybody else that would like to?
Yeah, I agree with Claire completely on that. And I do think there's another entity that needs to be discovered around social enterprises. And it's great to hear Nicole speaking about being a limited company, and that it's not a dirty word, and that it's good to earn. And I think it's great because it will encourage more young people to get involved in, businesses for good, which is fantastic to hear as well. So it's just, getting people's head around that is okay. And, again, that idea, what is a social enterprise? And I know there is the funding at the moment to promote that as well. And we're part of that as well, which is great. Again, building awareness so people understand what we're trying to do. But definitely, I do think it's great to hear something set up as a limited company and running that way as well.
Thanks, Miriam. And I think just for everybody, like one thing that was told to me when I was on the incubator was look outside of Ireland. Like look outside of Ireland. Ireland is a fantastic testing ground, but look everywhere else and what they're doing. And when I did that, I found that actually outside of Ireland, social enterprise is not defined by its legal structure, it's defined by the impact. Does your business have impact at the core? Then you are a social enterprise regardless of your structure. And I found loads of funds, loads of help, and loads, like a tribe of people that actually understood where I was coming from and why I set up how I set up. So like definitely guys, just look outside of Ireland, and if you're in that space that I was in, like, you know, just sit down and go with your gut. Like your gut will never steer you wrong, and your values, like me and Polly did this morning, if you have those values, work towards them and don't go against them just because you might think it'd be easier to gain a bit of funding. Like it won't.
Thanks, Nicole. I just thought we are going to do a question and answer session at the end, just so that everybody does know that. But I spot, Damien, you have a hand up. Is it?
Yeah, I'd just be interested in the barriers that Claire Downey faced with being registered as a CLG and with a charitable status. What were the real kind of barriers that makes you unhappy with the legal structure of the organization?
Yeah, do you know, Damien, if you don't mind, we'll actually, if we just bring that to the end, because we're coming up to that kind of questions and answers session very soon, if that's okay, and we can bring it back up then at that stage.
Yeah.
Cool, that's brilliant.
I just wanted to make a point, and again to echo what Nicole has said. You know, as you get to know your organization better, like your gut instinct starts to kick in better and better on it, and you can be overwhelmed with all the legalese of it. I do find I'm delighted that this conversation is being had, because you know, as I say, not everyone is legally minded, and in Ireland we are coming from a charity mindset that you're not doing good unless you are a charity. And we do have to get away from that, but actually as Nicole says, not to be afraid to make a profit. If you can't sustain yourself, you can't. It's the same themes that are kind of echoing through, that our attitude to money and our attitude to income generation. And we have had to, that's something we've learned about here in terms of like say as a CLG, when we started up, we got a large grant from the council, the regeneration grant, and that dependency culture then on the grant, and sort of pulling yourself away from this mindset of you need to have a grant to survive, and pulling yourself up to sustainability. I think it's just a process that we're just going through. It's just maybe who we are as a people, and where we're, you know, other countries such as England and that are very much more ahead of us. But we're learning, and we're learning fast at the same time. And there's no better learning than actually living through it and being, you know, able to make those mistakes and being able to say, oops, that wasn't a good thing to do. Like we did explore the idea of becoming a charity in order to, again, to access funding, etc. And we did get legal advice from through trust law, through Rethink Ireland, and I remember just that dynamic conversation with one of the legal people up in Dublin. He said, "Are you mad? Are you crazy?" And it was just, you know, you just needed to hear that common sense approach of why would you do it to yourself? You know, you can generate this income yourself, and this idea of you know, you have to kind of dig deep into yourself as well and say, right, we can do this. You know, so, but there's nothing like experience, and forums like this are brilliant, really, because it clears away a lot of the dross for people as they're at the beginning stages. But in terms of the CLG, quite honestly, if we weren't a CLG, I would be confident to say we wouldn't be here today. You know, so there's the right forum for you at the right time as well, and maybe the idea of not being afraid to change too is probably something that we should encourage people to be open to.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Is there any of the other panelists that would like to to say anything on that?
No, I just echo again what the other panelists are saying. It is, I suppose it's from that incubator program that we've done. Like it's more important to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, kind of rather than being reliant on grants and stuff. Like, because you know at that stage you have your own destiny in your hands. Like, and you know the grants are obviously very handy, especially in the initial stages in getting set up, but the ultimate aim has to be to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I suppose just at this stage, just wanted to make everybody aware of the, and Claire did allude to it at the very beginning, so that Social Impact Ireland have partnered with the SE mark, the CIC, which is an international accreditation body to pioneer the social enterprise mark in Ireland, so the first of its kind. And this social enterprise mark will define what it means to be a genuine social enterprise. It's an international accreditation with the central aim of using income and profits to maximize social benefit, and then that will take precedent over generating dividends for owners and shareholders. It'll also provide assurance for that a company is living up to its claims as a business committed to creating positive and social and environmental change. So if anybody wants to or if you're interested in this, just to check out our website, which is www.socialimpact.ie. So I suppose at this stage, I just want to thank all our speakers for such an informative and open conversation. It's great for everybody to hear all these conversations happening, and brilliant that so many people have joined us here online. So if you have any questions for anybody, just pop them in the chat now or through our Twitter account, and we'll go through them. Thanks. I know, Damien, actually, do you want to come back with your question that you were talking about there a few minutes ago?
Yeah, so I suppose, really quickly, like I'd be interested in the challenges of being registered as a company limited by guarantee and with a charitable status, because I've often heard that it works well in other instances. So I'd like to understand the challenges that Claire has experienced.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Eamon. I think it tracks back to what Anne was saying. It really comes down to understanding the nature of your organization and what you're doing. And, you know, I think it would be preferable, as I mentioned, if there was a status, an alternative status that kind of captured some of the nature of, I suppose, working with grant schemes and funds that you have in exchange for services. Because when you work with grant schemes, you're not just taking money and doing nothing with, I suppose, not giving anything back. There's a social impact return, and how that kind of works within your organization. So as I mentioned, like at the Rediscovery Centre, we don't do the fundraising, the donation end of what a lot of charities are involved in. So a lot of the charitable registration and the understanding of what a charity does is tied up in that as well. And if you're not acting in that area, then there's confusion about what you are as an entity as well. So while it's important to be able to access, to be able to work on certain activities, like certain types of grants and certain types of funding, on the other hand, it can create this different perception of what you are as an entity. And for example, you know, charities are sometimes seen as, and wrongly, as organizations that should provide loads of things for free, or give loads of handouts. And when you're a social enterprise acting as a business, where you reinvest your profits, that's not the position that you're in. And sometimes charities wrongly, again, are perceived as organizations that look for handouts all the time. And again, that's the wrong perception for an organization like the Rediscovery Centre. So I think yeah, a lot of that is tied up in communication and awareness too. But it would be easier to have a different form that allows you to do all the things you want to do without creating any confusion around what you are.
Yeah, thanks a million. Thanks for breaking it down. I suppose just like I'd like to add though, like as well, there's a bit of talk in the chat about kind of not being comfortable taking a living out of being a social actor, like solving social issues. Like at the end of the day, like you're running a business or an organization, like, and you can't do it unsteamed. You know, we're all trying to survive as well, like, you know. So I think people would kind of need to be a little bit more comfortable about taking a living wage out of what you're doing too. So I suppose that's another takeaway from this.
Yeah. Thanks, Damien. I see, Mamobo, you have your hand up there if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, of course. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm just in the university right now.
You're fine, no problem. Work away.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you there.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, perfect. So I have a question particularly for Liam. Where in my organization's like at that point of like deciding as well, and I was in Nicole's area of just like being in the middle of where should I go, what should I do, but at the end we decided to become a designated activity company, or a DAC. So Liam, I know with the designated activity company there is a constitution that you are like tied to, and your memorandum of association that you're tied to as well, and I want to know, has there been a situation where you had to kind of rethink the constitution, or you had to kind of like, you come up with a situation within your business or your company that you had to reevaluate that, and how did you manage that? And then another question is that being one of the, I think you said the first company with Rethink Ireland, how did you manage that, or was there any pushback being a DAC in that Rethink Ireland program? Thank you.
Thanks, thanks for the question. Yeah, probably the one answer will probably do for both questions. When we applied for the Rethink Fund, they saw that we were a designated activity company, and you know they needed to clarify on the constitution that we had to insert a piece to the CRO, the company registration office, to clarify that we are a not-for-profit. And we had to submit. There is a notice on the company registrations office form that you fill out if you're changing to a not-for-profit, and so we filled that out, and that was sufficient then for Rethink Ireland, and that also clarified that we were a not-for-profit, and everybody was satisfied with that. So I think that answers both questions, is it?
Yeah, that definitely does. Thanks, Million.
Brilliant. So we have a question in here. How do you, or can a person get non-government funding to create a social enterprise? If any of the speakers would like to take that question.
I think Nicole said about the corporate social responsibility is a good route to go as well. She had mentioned that. I haven't actually, well, I've engaged with one organization and we are getting some support, so it's working in kind, well, payment in kind, but I haven't, that's as far as I've gone so far, but I do think it's something we're definitely looking into.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, it will come down to your legal structure at the end of the day. Like if you're starting off and you're in a position where you're just volunteering, or like if you're volunteering, you can get access to like community type funds, which are small, but they help you start off. But then later down the line, you have to kind of incorporate, or you be a sole trader. So there's benefits to all of that kind of stuff, and they're very different. But CSR is a good kind of route to go down. Now it's a long-winded route. It takes a lot of effort and time. There's back and forth. It's a long process. And like for me, being limited, it's kind of almost like a thing where I have, like, because I provide services, so therefore they can't just give me funds. I still have to provide a service because that's how my structure is. I can't take donations or anything like that. So that's the kind of route that I tend to go down. But also I have, like, people pay me, so like they pay me for my services, let's say, as well, and that's absolutely fine. But like if you're starting out and you're in that voluntary space, you haven't incorporated, then I'd say like community grants, those kinds of things that you can find on ActiveLink very easily all the time, you'd fit into that.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, the same person actually sent in another question, which actually is probably more relevant to our part 2 series, but I put it out to anybody that's in the panel here today. So how do you make a social enterprise business profitable?
I'd like to find out the answer to that one myself.
You'll have to join us for part 2.
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah.
You know, don't have a pandemic. You know, well, we're hoping to be profitable this year, hoping. It's build the capacity, build the scale, you know, reduce costs. It's the same business, you know, it's you learn the hard way. Buy cheaply, sell, profit margin. No, all jokes aside, I think our attitude to profit and all of that, you know, all the business models that are there, say in our situation, on a very basic concept, like the retail would say you need about 30% to cover your costs. And our struggles would have been that because we were grant funded at the beginning, we had 20% margin, and getting from 20 to 30% has been our challenge. And we've been using the room rental and all those periphery enterprises in order to make up that difference, because you couldn't bring up the food so huge, you know, put up the price so hugely. So it's that's how we're doing it. But we had a pandemic in the meantime that closed down that part of the business, so it took time. So we're hoping that this year we'll do it. That's how we're doing it. Report back next year and I'll let you know whether that works.
Oh, Michaela, you're just on mute, sorry.
Oh.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for that. I just noticed Patricia has her hand up there. Did you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's kind of more of a comment than a question. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of Les Brown. He's a really famous motivational speaker, and I came across him. I've known about him for quite a while, but I started listening to him, and he's a podcast called Greatness Radio. So first of all, if you're a not-for-profit, it's totally acceptable to earn a wage out of it, you know. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Damien, but there was a guy that spoke, I'm not sure what the guy's name is, I'm sorry. And he was talking about, oh, feeling guilty. Well, you have to live, and you have to make a wage, and you have to pay your staff. So like, you have to think about, like, what's the purpose of what you're doing? How do you create that business? Like, what's your mission, your vision, your values? And if you know, they will change over time, but I just feel that, you know, you're not taking money. It's not like you're stealing it. You're not embezzling it. You're paying yourself, because it's a not-for-profit doesn't mean that you're not working. You know, otherwise you just go out and volunteer and do it for free. You know, and value your own worth. That's something I'm learning a huge, huge amount. Every Thursday night from 8 until 10 o'clock, there's a brilliant Twitter Spaces chat on, and it's led by a company called We Do, and it's a lady called Samantha Kelly, and she's known as the tweeting goddess. That's her Twitter, like @tweeting goddess. And just the people that are on there, I love it. Like, everybody's very encouraging. They're so positive. They're so like-minded. You know, there's everybody doing all kinds of things, whether it's not for profit or whatever, but it's all about helping each other. You know, so like if you run a not-for-profit or you run a church, you're not taking the money. Taking the money implies you're stealing it. You're making it. Because if you take the money, like look up a company called Mountain Equipment Co-op. It's one of the largest not-for-profits in Canada, if not North America. And all the profits that they make, they use that profit to put it back into the business, but they also use it to pay their staff. You know, so like, I don't know, I think it's more of a mindset than it is anything else. Like, if you run a not-for-profit, I mean, I want to open up a not-for-profit, but I'm damned if I'm not going to pay myself. Of course I'm going to pay myself, but I'm not taking the money. Taking's like, well, I'm going to embezzle it, you know, or I'm doing something illegal. You're not doing anything illegal because you have to live. And the more profit you can generate, the more you can take that money and put it back into the organization that you're setting up. And then the more impact and the more change you can create. Sorry, that's just my opinion. But yeah, it's a lot of it's to do with its mindset. It's called Les Brown Greatness Radio. And he's a podcast. Yeah. So
Yeah,
if people are kind of worrying about that or whatever, just go on and listen to him and he'll chat about that.
We'll definitely check them out after the call. Thanks for all the hints and tips there. Fiona, did you have your hand up?
I did. I'm trying to catch up on messages here. What I'm just seeing about Pauline's there about Rethink Ireland, because if some of my answer could be in there. Just to find out, going back to the limited formation, because Jobs for Family Cares is limited. So Nicole, you're going to get an email from me for a chat. But to find out where is Ireland regarding looking at limited in the social enterprise sector. Is there any movement on it? Is it in conversation at the moment? Again, it's through my learnings through SII and through conversations with Pauline and Eamon. One of the things that Eamon always had mentioned was, not to chase the grant. Don't choose a formation based on a grant that you want. Do you know what I mean? Don't run after the money, because it's the long-term goals you want, not the short-term goals. And that always rings through, but it's still, those little doubts kicking in your head every once in a while when you see another exclusion of limited. So is there any move on those conversations at a national level when it comes to limited being included in the social enterprise sector?
Can I
have your hand up there?
Can I jump in here? Sorry to cut across you, Michaela, but just because I know this area. Hi, Fiona. Okay, so there was a piece of research that was released last October, and you can find that it was actually commissioned with Rethink Ireland. And what they did was they analysed all the legal structures in Ireland, and they looked at it from a European viewpoint to determine, would we have a dedicated legal form here in Ireland? The result of that is not surprising, although for some disappointing, and that is that no, we will not get a dedicated legal form. So now that we know that as a definite, what are the next steps? So what they've done is they've made a couple of recommendations as an outcome from that research. One of those is something like a social enterprise mark. And I know that it comes from, this is something we've been working on for 2 years. A social enterprise mark allows you to stand out from the competition and allows you to stand out as a genuine social enterprise. But to answer your question, Fiona, is a limited company going to be recognised at some stage in Ireland as still being a social enterprise? And I'm going to be quite crude here and say at some stage it bloody well better be, because there are limited companies out there like yours and Alex's Adventure, and it is wrong not to include them as social enterprises. So I hope the answer to that is yes. The reality on the ground, though, from the ground up and at a policy level, is there are definitely plans to be more inclusive. There are talks about more inclusivity around legal structure and looking at it as being more than legal structure, but actually looking at social impact. Talk is cheap. The reality is you will get so far, and then there is somebody somewhere who's afraid to take the leap. There is somebody somewhere who is afraid to allocate funding to a limited company because it is not the norm and it is not accepted as being the norm. So my answer to that is, if you are a limited company, I would say then start to highlight your transparency. So what they're worried about, they being the whoever is out there, but what the worry is that you make a profit and that profit is used inappropriately or is given to shareholders. So what I say is you make the profit, but you don't take the profit. You make it and you reinvest it. And Patricia is 100% right. You have to think about what is the definition of a profit. And this is part of the next event that we have, because I think sometimes we get confused. Profit comes after you pay yourself, not beforehand. So you have to pay yourself, you have to pay the bills, you have to pay the staff and the team members and for the products and the services. It's what's left is profit. So what do you do with that? Well, as a social enterprise, you invest that genuine real profit back into your social impact. And what we're seeing, Fiona, is that they're looking for transparency around what you do with that profit. In short, we're not there yet. I know it's really frustrating. I've been having conversations one-on-one with people who are having a really hard time with funding applications, who really are, I do believe, has come from the devil, full stop, because so much work goes into them. You get so far and then you don't get the funding, and you know in your heart and soul it's because you're a limited company. So there is great work being done from ground level and policy level. We're not there yet. I think it's a huge concern. I think that Nicole is right. You can be really creative and innovative, but the reality is at your stage or at the beginning stage, and I go back to what Anne was saying, sometimes you do have to pick a legal structure that's not quite you in order to get you off the ground or get you through a stage, so that when you are more established, then you have more choices open to you. And unfortunately, that's the reality of what we're in at the moment. And I just do want to highlight, although not necessarily as a limited company, we are seeing great change with funders. Rethink Ireland, we've seen them, they supported Liam as a DAC, that was the first in the country. They really are striving to be inclusive and to do all that they can, but sometimes it's not a clear box that we can maneuver around. It's a couple of boxes that we have to jump through to get to where we want to. So I hope that answers, and I know it's not necessarily the answer that you want.
No, it's into the fact the conversation is being had is huge.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Pauline, for answering that. Fiona, I see your hand up there, Fiona Callan.
Yeah, just to say a couple of things. First, this has been great to actually hear from people who've been through all the kind of head debates with themselves about the structures, because it makes a lot of sense then when you can hear the practicalities, because it is a bit of a minefield. Just first of all, to say that I think it was Pauline was talking a few minutes ago about profit, and it's been mentioned a couple of times. And one thing I think is really important for people is to look at their relationship with money. Particularly if you're inclined to be in the social enterprise space, because you're kind of naturally wanting to be in that giving space and the kind of common good and do something. And money can be kind of associated with like capitalism, and that's not really very kind of social orientated. So on a personal level, to really look at your relationship with that, that's something I had to do to kind of make sense of it, or to understand myself a bit more. And then I've no problem with it now. I think I've no problem with it now, but it just made sense for me internally around that whole area. The other one is just, I think this debate is great, because I think the whole discussion about structures really takes the focus away from people doing what they're setting out to do, because it really becomes a bit head-wrecking when you're thinking, I really need to fit into structures, or what's the best, and it just takes so much time and energy. And coming back to what Nicole was talking about there, about it's kind of, there's nothing wrong with making a profit, and the whole emphasis on social enterprise is really about the common good, or the human good, or the public good, or just good in general. And I think the more the debate can happen, it's not going to happen overnight, but it just keeps it on the agenda, that there's more to this than fitting into a neat box that says social enterprise, because that means so many, many different things. And it comes down to the impact, or what you're actually doing for with your profits, and then the impact in turn with that as well. So thanks for the debate today.
Great, thank you, Fiona, for all your comments and the interaction. Brilliant, thank you. I just spotted a general question here in the chat. So the question is, once you've decided on your structure, where did you begin? And can you pick out maybe one or two key steps that you felt were adopting that the structure in its earnest and starting to get some momentum up? What can you, sorry, I'll just reread that again. Once you decided on your structure, where did you begin? And can you pick out maybe one or two key steps for you where you felt like you were adopting the structure in earnest and started to get some momentum in setting up?
I think for me, one piece of advice that I would give people, if you're not good with finances or money or setting, get an accountant. It is the best investment that I've ever made in my entire life, because I'm shocking at all those bits, but the accountant takes care of it. And it just really helps you not to be in trouble, because I always fear that I'd be in trouble with revenue. And I'm like, oh God, if I'm in trouble with revenue, that's it. They're gonna like close me down and stuff. So just get that accountant, get that paperwork in order. That's the best piece of advice that I can give people, especially if you're not good. Like, you can do a lot of it online, but if you're not good with it, don't stress yourself.
Lovely. I see, Fiona, you have your hand up there again. Oh no, you're fine, no bother. I'm just going back through. And so we've another question here in the chat. Where is the social enterprise sector right now regarding recognised limited companies? I think that's kind of, we've kind of addressed some of that issue already. And just check before, oh yeah. We have that. Just want to make sure that we cover everybody's, we're coming up to the final couple of minutes now. Just want to make sure that everybody's questions have been answered. I think we are pretty much there. And so listen, thank you to everybody for all your super questions today. There was a huge amount of engagement, and that appears to be everything that's been raised today. So do feel free to contact us at Social Impact Ireland, and we'd be happy to help you with any of the queries that you might have. So we provide short courses, we have one-to-one business advice clinics, a 4-month incubator program, and lots more throughout the year. We have a huge calendar throughout this year. So thank you so much to all our lovely panelists for joining us here today and for giving the information so freely, being so open and honest. That's what we love to hear. It's brilliant that people can come on this call and hear that information. So as I mentioned at the start, this is only part 1 of a 6-part series. So it's our conversations of impact, and our next topic will be profit, which did come into our conversation today. What we mean by the word profit, that profit is not a dirty word, all those kind of images that we have, who makes a profit and what we should be doing with the profits. I suppose we see business models that harmonize making impact and making a profit as very interesting and the most interesting. So thank you all so much for joining us here today, especially our panelists, and we hope that you'll join us again for part 2 of our conversations of impact in a few weeks. What we're going to do, if you don't mind, is just take a screenshot of everybody, so everybody can give a big wave before we sign off for today. So that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much to everybody today. Amazing conversations, and thank you for joining us. And please do link in with us again in another couple of weeks.
Can I ask a super fast question? When are the next information sessions? Like